The second lockdown, they banned online sales. Effectively, a lot of things that happen here in Thailand is protective mechanisms for the big players, and that's all that was.
Okay.
So big players were still selling, but small guys like us, we were not allowed. And I had friends who were still doing it on the side. They all got fined. They all got, so it was a ploy to try and, I guess, kill off any small players. So it did have an impact.
While the world's still asleep, we're already grinding. Walking foreign streets, big city lights so blinding. Learning and hustling in this relentless game. The emerge pods next up, we're breaking the frame. While the world's still asleep, we're breaking the frame. We already grinding. The emerge pods next up, we're breaking the frame. Big city lights, woo, so blinding. Check it out.
Hi, and welcome to the Emerge podcast, where we break down emerging markets and give you actionable insights on how to start and grow your business in them. Today, we're talking to Thai-Australian entrepreneurs Paul and Mary, who started a tobacco business in Thailand that transitioned into an alcohol business and is now an events management company managing music festivals in the country. Their business journey offers all the twists and turns that you would expect of running a business in an emerging market. What's really interesting is how they evolved their business based on market requirements and the changes in law, especially during and after COVID. Check it out. But I would say thank you so much, guys, for taking the time to be on the Emerge podcast. I've been studying your business a little bit, and I see that you guys are doing a lot of different things at the same time. So could you guys give me like an overview of where you guys started and what you guys are doing now?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we started actually with distribution of FMCG products, and that was predominantly tobacco. But we shifted into alcohol. Distribution of that, but it was also then a case of creating our own brands and doing activations. So once we started doing activations, it opened up avenues and I guess an ecosystem of everything that's related to food and beverage and hospitality. So that's why when you look at our business, it's not just one finite element. It's actually, we play what's called the infinite game, and we link up various aspects of food, beverage and hospitality together. So that's why we do events, we create brands, we import, we export, and we do branding and strategies for other players as well.
Interesting. That's quite a lot of things at the same time. So how did all of this start? Where are you guys from originally?
Where we born, where we raised.
So you're citizens. I'm getting the feeling that you're citizens of the world then.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, look, we were both Mary and I were born in Thailand. Our parents were both born in Thailand, but they moved to Australia when we were quite young, and so we were brought up in Australia. Hence the accent that we have.
Yeah.
But me personally, I moved out of Australia 30 years ago. And just traveled all over the world doing various activities. And Mary?
So I lived and worked in Australia predominantly I've had what's called an eclectic collection of experiences. Traditionally, I was trained as a chartered accountant, but dealing with companies that were not doing so well. And my job mainly was to go in and either resuscitate them or put them to rest. So I became very familiar with how to run small businesses that were in trouble, how to solve problems, and learned a lot of skills about a lot of different industries because it was a portfolio career. So that's why between the two of us, we have skills that stretch quite broadly, and that puts us in a good position right now to do this.
Yeah, and I guess what led us back here? What led us back here was firstly from a corporate perspective. I was moved back here, so I went from a corporate life to an entrepreneurship where I was trying to do entrepreneurial things within a corporate environment because the brand that I was asked to run within the company, to then eventually moving into entrepreneurship itself. And part of the reason here in Thailand was Our parents were getting, were in their later years of life, and we felt that, having travelled the world and living away from them, we felt that we wanted to spend the last years of their lives, in the same country. Hence, we started the business here, and also because it was getting to a point where you work in a corporate environment, even though it was entrepreneurship, it was gut wrenching. It was just taking your soul away. Whereas doing what we do, we enjoy it. We're passionate about it. We've been smacked in the faces quite a few times, but it's not how you fall; it's how you rise.
Absolutely. No, that's a pretty inspiring story going from from a corporate life. Of course, whenever someone does that, there's always that fear of whether this is going to work out, because what the corporate life does it gets you hooked, because there's such a safety net that no matter what you do at your job, at the end of the day, you're getting that paycheck. And I guess moving from that to entrepreneurship must have been quite a change. But I guess since it was in the same industry, that was probably more comfortable for you.
Yeah, it was. I mean, for me personally, I was the managing director of Bacardi Thailand and Southeast Asia. So
Mm.
I moved from a big corporate in alcohol into food and beverage on my own. But you're absolutely right in terms that it probably took me about 4 to 5 years to make the decision. My mind was already set, but in terms of what you say, the safety net, I think there's four elements. There's the status of your job, it's
Yeah.
the financial security, it's society and people around you going, why would you want to do that? Go out on your own. And I guess the one thing that both Mary touched upon, or what Mary and I both have, is you have to have that internal self-confidence and self-belief that you can do it, because it is fearful. It is a big jump, to do that. But, we did it, and we're still alive, and that's our motto.
Also
Just
very
keep on living. Yeah.
uncomfortable.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, but you first started off your business in the tobacco industry. So what was that like? Were you importing tobacco for distributors or wholesalers? What were you doing with it?
We started it originally importing. So basically, before I worked for Bacardi, I worked for Philip Morris. So I knew the tobacco industry, quite well. And we saw a gap in the marketplace at the low end of the market. And so we found a brand that wanted to come into Thailand. And look, these industries, both tobacco and alcohol, are not easy industries to enter the market here. But we found a gap. So we slowly, imported in, put everything on the line, and just started building from there. And it was going quite well, even though the margins were not great. The turnover was quite good, but it allowed us to really understand the marketplace a lot more than, say, when you're working for a big corporate.
Yeah.
And it was successful for a couple of years, and then there was a law change with the excise and the government here in Thailand, which just put it at too much of a risk factor for people who fund their own business.
Right. So you brought in a brand of an already existing tobacco brand, or was it in the form of cigarettes, or was it loose tobacco?
It was in the form of cigarettes. So it was finished tobacco. It was a brand that was established. It was already in Singapore. It was in some other countries in Asia, but it just wasn't. It just wasn't in Thailand.
But what scale of investments and marketing and distribution do you require to launch a brand like that?
Okay, so marketing tobacco in Thailand is illegal, so there's not a great deal that you can do. What it comes down to is relationships with the trade, relationships with wholesalers, as well as being smart in terms of how you would do trade deals and promotions, and finding the gap in the marketplace. So look, what it required was, and part of why we had to stop was one container to import in, with the taxation and everything on top, equated to what, 25 million baht a container,
Okay.
which is a lot of money. And so the original was you would place a bank guarantee, you'd go and get tax stamps, you'd send down to the factory and put on. Where the law changed was you had to actually go and physically buy the tax stamps, send it to the factory, and then get them put on. So you've already paid the tax before
Shipment arrives, yeah.
shipment arrives. If the container falls off the ship between Indonesia and here, there's 25 million baht gone.
No insurance on that?
Well, you can get insurance, but then that raises the taxation even higher.
Oh,
That's how
okay.
sadly the legislation here is. They find ways with which to protect the industry. There is a local tobacco manufacturing monopoly here, owned by the government. So it's in their interest to try and protect that as much as possible. So it was just getting too risky for us to do.
Right. So was it at this point that you brought Mary in because she was already experienced in solving problems?
Mary came in. Mary came in a couple of years after we started the company to help in terms of the commercial and the financial management of the business overall. So she did come in before we shifted that. Before we pivoted the business towards alcohol.
Hmm. Right. And Mary, what was the situation? So was the company already running? It was in trouble already, or was it running smoothly when you joined?
The company wasn't in trouble as such because it was operating quite profitably. However, we recognise that that's lesson number one in entrepreneurship. One change in law can literally destroy
Your business, yeah.
Completely. We recognised that before it destroyed the business. So we made the decision to hop out. So there's your risk, the skills in risk assessment. That's the insolvency skill that I brought to the table. It's just that, be careful. We're headed down a path here. So
Interesting.
once that happened, what do? Do you stop or do you do something else? So because Paul had the experience in alcohol and a huge passion for alcohol, he loves alcohol a lot.
Yeah. I drink for a living.
In every way, shape, form.
You have that excuse now. Okay, this is my job.
Yeah. Yes.
So we decided let's give alcohol a go. Unfortunately, we did this 5 months before COVID hit.
Yeah.
Right.
And I guess this is a good lesson in terms of you can do something that is profitable, that makes money, that and it's not that I didn't enjoy doing the tobacco industry because it was fun at the time. But me personally, I don't smoke. I never have, and I'm not passionate about it. And so one of the things that entrepreneurs and Mary just touched upon is that we are very passionate about alcohol and the industry that it's in. Not because it's not just about enjoying it, but it's about trying different things and doing things differently from I guess what the big boys and the big guys do. And that's what really keeps us going is the passion and drive that we have for this industry.
It's so interesting. The last 3 or 4 episodes that I've done for the Emerge podcast, when I ask, how do you keep your business going? I found that everyone I've spoken to who is successful has that, fire within them about their product. So when they start talking about their product, you can see their passion in their expression and the way they're showing it. And that's just showing me that, if whether it's in Southeast Asia or whether it's any market, if you want your business to be successful, you need to love your own product or love your own offering. If you don't have that, it's very difficult to succeed.
Yeah, look, I'll let Mary touch upon just to give you some facts over the last couple of years, but just to the point that you just said, we have one, and everyone in the organisation follows this. We have one particular, rule, and that is if we don't like it, we don't drink it ourselves, we don't sell it, and we don't represent it. So we've had brands come and ask us to do distribution or to represent them, but if we're not passionate about it and we don't believe in it, i.e. we don't enjoy drinking it, then we're not the right people to represent it. So we're very focused in the way with which we select what we do. But I think to that point, I think it's good for Mary to just what you say is passion and drive. Gets you through tough times. Mary can give you some facts over the last couple of years. It has not been easy.
Yeah. So, as I said, to go back to the beginning, we decided to do this not long before COVID graced itself upon us. Our original idea was to create our own brand of alcohol at the base level. Because we had success in tobacco at the lower end of the market, and anybody who's created businesses for lower end of the market understand mass. So yes, the margins are lower, but you do have a volume, you have critical mass. In alcohol, then we decided that at the time we would create some products for bars that were affordable, good quality, and safe, because spirits sometimes in Thailand at that low end can be quite unsafe. We hit our first stumbling block in that the supplier wanted to have a massive minimum order, which my assessment was we would just die if we engaged in that, let alone having to find an investor and money. So we had to pivot. That was the first pivot. We couldn't start with spirits. So then we turned to wine. We created our own brand. The brand is called Rival, and Paul's
Nice.
singing the Rival song.
Fantastic.
And the brand Rival was made in honour of our father and our mother, who obviously for their time they saw things very differently to the average Thais. There are 6 of us in the family. They migrated to Australia because they recognised that the education system was better and they wanted better for us. They always taught us to be better. It didn't matter how good you were, you can always be better. So you had to rival yourself. And if you were really bad, then you had a long way to go. So keep moving. So the keep moving thing was part of our DNA. So when the spirits didn't work, we went to wine. And we created the brand Rival, and it was all about that. We were very fortunate because we're Australian Thais. We've always had this dream of bringing Australia to Thailand, and so we started with wine. And wine, we had suppliers who were very good to us, who helped us put the brand together. We recognised that we had the marketing, we had the commercial, we had a couple of other people around us who were designers. So we sort of had this whole chain that just started. Unfortunately, we got the whole thing up, got it all going, got our first container in, COVID hit.
Yeah. Oh, that's bad. And it was locked down for quite a while, right?
Yes.
Quite a while.
And unlike many other countries, Thailand banned alcohol sales during COVID. So it was a cliff, and it just
fell
dropped
off a cliff.
Yeah.
And the cliff was a 64% drop in revenue immediately.
Okay. Because bars closed down, right? So where were you
bars,
selling them?
restaurants, hotels.
Everything.
Yeah, everything.
So where was that 36% being sold then?
We did some online. The first lockdown, they allowed online sales, so we did do some online sales. But then the second lockdown, they banned online sales. Effectively, a lot of things that happen here in Thailand is protective mechanisms for the big players, and that's all that was.
Okay.
So big players were still selling, but small guys like us, we were not allowed. And I had friends who were still doing it on the side. They all got fined. They all got, so it was a ploy to try and, I guess, kill off any small players. So it did have an impact.
So there was a bit of guerrilla.
That's kind of disturbing from a political level. So if the government's not looking out for the small guy, that's kind of disturbing for any new entrants in the market.
Correct.
Yes, and that's true. And I guess if anyone who follows Thai politics would know that the actual the actual party that won the last election and got voted the last election, the prime minister who got voted in the last election, who is not the prime minister, was going for the small guys. They were trying to. He personally was trying to encourage more competition. Less of this duopoly, monopolistic practices, and hence why he's not the prime minister.
Right. So the capitalists win.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
But because we were small, we didn't have bank debt.
Of course.
we actually were just like little gorillas. We just did whatever we could
So
to
were
get.
you fully self-funded at this point, Mary?
Yes.
Yes.
We're
Yes.
still
Okay.
fully self-funded. So yes, we acted like little gorillas. We did what we could. I guess at the time our issue was we had staff, and this is the learning Paul and I have had in the last 4 years. Sometimes when you run a business and your heart is too big, you're going to get
Yes.
hurt.
That's true.
And so we held on to the staff in the belief that they would be loyal. As soon as COVID was finished, they all went, thanks, bye.
Oh
So we didn't,
no.
a lot of companies got rid of staff. A lot of companies, cut salaries. We kept all the salaries. We kept all the staff. We had them working from home, trying to do research and do various things, with the view that once COVID was up, we would need the staff to just keep pushing. And Mary and I made that strategic decision in that if we let people go, then when time is to put the foot down again, it's going to take time to build up. So we thought, let's keep them on. Sadly, when we put the foot down, they're going, we're used to working from home 4 days a week. But we don't want to work like this anymore. So they all quit.
And the worst part was they would now, because of COVID and the precedent that COVID set, they would now easily find work from home jobs that have 4 days a week, right?
Correct.
So, and that's the thing, the unknown. COVID was an unknown, and we followed what we felt was the right thing to do, but I still think it was the right thing to do morally, but it just wasn't a very good business decision. But in any case, we get lucky as well. I mean, we then nabbed a contract to put our products into retail.
Yeah.
So what stock we had, we were lucky we had stock. So because we got it in just before COVID. So because we had stock, we were then able to put it into retail for a little while to build the name up. Be it wasn't at a price that we wanted, but it was movement. It was momentum. It was sustainable. It was momentum. So we got lucky. We did that. When COVID passed, the businesses that started to open up, we recognised, okay, we have stock, but we also had to do things to help these businesses grow. This is where the activation came in. So we decided we had to activate our product, but we don't just activate our product for our product. We collaborate with the venues to make sure that we're activating the venue also. Mm-hmm. So much so that they were very supportive of us, and then we were able to get a lot of customers through that process. It was incredibly tiring. A lot of drinking, a lot of dancing, a lot of activating. But in the end, it put us on the map in an area of town that made us look like we were big people, but we were not. We were just noisy.
Right. Well, fake it till you make it, right?
Correct.
Something like that, yeah.
No,
So
but at that point, was your main product still the rival wine?
Yes. Yeah.
What does the activation for wine look like? Because I always get that very, professional and, very decent persona with wine. So what's Rival's persona like?
Okay, I think we need to tell you what our product is. It's not just the wine that we present is an entry-level wine. The intent of it is to create it for people who want to enter the drinking wine but don't really know how. Don't want to invest too much in it, so it's relatively safe and easy to enter. We then, to activate it, we created a lot of different wine cocktails. We went into venues and showed them different things that they could do with the wine as opposed to just selling wine. Because our wines are not the higher end of the market, it's easy to tamper with it without ruining it too much. In that it can go as an ingredient in cocktails, it can be mixed with other spirits, and it's quite nice.
I think it's important to note that during COVID, what happened was a lot of people were at home. So they were consuming, when they could, they were consuming alcohol at home. So, they then realised that, hey, let's use beer as an example, right? I buy a bottle of Singer beer for 49 baht, but when I go and drink in a venue, it's 150 baht. Why would I do that? Yep. So what was happening was, and this is where I think it helped us. because we took the time to understand the consumer, we also understand then the behaviour that was taking place. We had a lot of hotel chains, big hotel chains, such as the Hyatts, the W's, and that, saying, we want your wine because we want to put something in now that is not available in 7-Eleven, that's not available in retail, etc. So that's how it helped us. And then they said, we'd like you to come do some activities and activations. So as Mary said, we were doing different things. We would do like a rosé spritz. We would do wine cocktails using the cocktails. Because what happens is people want to drink wine, but they get bored of it after a while. Yep. So how did we spice it up? We throw some infusions. We throw some things in to there. But when we activate, we don't only just activate for our brand. We then try and partner up with other brands, with alcohol that allows the consumer to have, I guess, an option and a choice. But it's really the energy and the experiences that we try and bring to the occasion that people remember. They'll remember Rival versus remembering Shivers that was there alongside us, because we're the ones who are driving the activation and the experience.
So when you say that you're collaborating with other alcohol brands, so are you creating cocktails that are now brands in themselves?
We use a lot of different brands. That makes sense depending upon the occasion and what we do. So where our business also shifted when we started doing small events. So we started doing events for like 50 to 100 people. Then it got up to 500 people. Then all of a sudden we start getting asked to do food and beverage management for up to 40,000 people per day.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
Which then means that we do research on what do the consumers want in a festival situation, who's the artist, and how do we match them up? So then we go to the brand principals and go, hey, we've got this concert coming up. We think that the best product suited for the artist is brand X, and we bring them into the equation.
And then, of course, you're selling your product on these events as well.
Correct.
Okay. So at this stage,
that's where the ecosystem starts building.
Yeah. So at this stage, you transition from just one brand into like an event management and food and beverage management company for events.
That's right. Yeah, and concurrently, because our customers didn't want our product in retail, and we got lucky and had it in retail, we had to pull it out of retail. So we then started creating products for the retailer. So then we realised that we can actually put the same product in, reskin it, because we had designers on our side, reskin it, and they can have that product in as a different brand, because they didn't really care if it was Rival or whatever. The value proposition for them was affordable value, so we did that for them. So then we had traffic going into the retail side on a brand that didn't look anything like the brand that we were selling in HoReCa. So then we learned a new skill on how to do private label. That was through necessity. Because we drove a little bit of volume on that, we then recognised that we were spending too much money shipping and having somebody else clear, and we forced our staff to go and learn how to clear product out of excise so that we could save money, but equally we ended up developing a side business, importing for other people. Okay. Because once you start to import, once you start to know the people at the port and the excise, we didn't know it at the time, but what happens is you develop relationships that allow you to get things out a lot easier than other people.
So now you're offering that as a service as well to other brands.
Correct. We've become a service entity.
Okay.
And most of the things that we've done, we've learned from doing our own thing. And then we decided, we can make a market out of this, which we have.
True. That's interesting.
So now we have the whole supply chain.
Yeah, you've pretty much grown organically as the need arose for your own products. You started learning that thing, and then when you had to get into activations, you learned activation, and now you do it for others. When you got into import, you had to learn how to clear stuff. Now you're doing it for others. What's next?
Data.
Okay, that's the end. Yeah, all right.
When I lived in Australia, I was the CFO of AGB Nielsen Media Research. We did television data. So I've always known the value of data.
Absolutely.
And as you know, Google all over the place. But small operators don't think of those things because they're just trying to operate.
Yeah.
We've started connecting with
Payment gateways.
And their ability to collect data, so that we can use that data as a tool for them to assess the success of their events, forecast the volume of sales, and also have something that we can talk to sponsors about when we take out to the next event. So we're trying to develop that product as well, concurrently.
Because again, it comes back to understanding, and we use the term ecosystem. It comes down to understanding the ecosystem of an event. Quite often, event organisers are only looking at the artist, the production, what's needed. What they leave on the table is, when people go to an event, they have money in their pocket, they want to spend it. What can they spend it on? So there's food and beverage, opportunities there. Sponsors want to sponsor events, but they don't want to sponsor it if they don't have enough return on investment or follow through, in terms of that. If you do a great event, it's about the spin that you get afterwards. It's not just the event itself. It's how much you can keep on spinning that, saying, "Oh, wasn't that a great event?" And when's it going to be next year? So what we look at, what Mary and I do is we assess right from the time they announce to the time they finish, and then we do reporting for them, and we see that there's gaps, and so that's where we're now looking at, well, how do we actually plug in these gaps and bring in other people to collaborate with us in order for us to go to to an event organizer and go, hey, this is what we can offer. Here's what you're currently doing. Here's what you can do, and here's the benefits that you're going to get from it.
Okay, so in that model, what does your what does your commercial look like in terms of finance? So you're charging a consultation fee on the event, and then you have brand deals in place that you also charge with the partners
Yes.
that you're working with.
Yeah. So the value proposition to the client is to increase their revenue, essentially.
Of course.
And that increase in revenue comes from the work that we do, the reconnaissance work, and also the management work that we do on the ground. So our commercial model is we will charge a base fee, which is reasonable for them, not too risky. And that's in order for us to get in. Once we are in, we charge a percentage. We agree on a base revenue for them that they keep, and then anything above that base revenue we will take a percentage of, because we are certain that through the work that we do, we are able to generate additional income for them, and that's the commercial proposition. In the event that the data that we get then brings in future sponsorship, then there'll be
we get percentage. We get
different arrangements. Got it.
Yes.
So I guess you guys are uniquely positioned with an understanding of a lot of industries around that events and the entire ecosystem. I'd like to tie this back to what the Emerge podcast tries to do. So what we try to do is, first, of course, tell stories of how people found success in these emerging markets. But what we also try to do is that we have a large portion of our audience who's looking to invest or start businesses in these emerging markets. So now, since you guys have a good understanding of the entire ecosystem, what part of the supply chain do you think there's an opportunity or a gap that someone could, get in, invest money into it, start a company, and that would work into the same ecosystem that you're working in?
Look, I definitely think one of the big issues that we're looking at the moment is investment in systems that there are many players out there who they either have a ticketing system, they have a POS system, they have an RFID system,
they have table management.
They have table management systems, but none of them really talk to one another, so they can't aggregate the data and they can't link. And then, of course, then there's the banking system that comes in over the top, and stock management. So there are systems out there that do all of these things, but not everything. So event organisers don't have the time or the headspace to think about all these things. And then what we also found is systems are nice. You can build a system that can fly to the moon, but if you don't have a good operator behind it, somebody who has instinctive knowledge on how events function and the flow and movement of events, then those systems are just systems. So what we're trying to do right now is aggregate all these things. So an investor who wants to come in and look at helping us build that whole frame, that's
because it doesn't actually exist.
Yeah.
I mean, we've done so many events, and we've spoken to, like, I mean, we work with the biggest event, who's actually been sued in the US, Live Nation, right? So we've worked with them, and even they're saying, look, come up with a system that actually helps us manage the entire process all the way through, because their focus is on bringing the artists. On bringing Taylor Swift, on bringing Harry Styles and all those. They're not focused on food and beverage, but from a consumer perspective, a customer perspective, it comes down to the experience. We go to concerts not just to see the artists. We go to be with our friends, have fun, have drinks, also. And so where we see the gaps is what Mary says, is that no one is actually looking at it all the way through. If there was an investor who was prepared to go, yep, I get it, and go all the way through and then understand it, it would actually work. But come down to what Mary said, and this is where we play different roles in an event situation. Mary pretty much plays the planning and the background in the back office, looking at the systems, looking at the payment structures and all that stuff. I'm in the front. I'm selling, I'm pushing and all that stuff. We're communicating real time all the time. So Mary will be analysing data as the events, live data as the event's going on. And she will walkie-talkie me and say, Paul, there's an issue with VIP Bath 3. What's going on there? There's not enough sales going through there. So I'll go running and having a look there, and I'll fix the issue there and then. So that's the future that events can take, that you can actually, capture and maximize your return by looking at the data real time.
So again,
who's spending money?
I think with that, you guys are uniquely positioned to actually have a software as a service division within your company, with like a couple of people building the system and a couple of people, working it and selling it. So what's stopping you guys from building the system at this point in time?
Money. and the other thing is, the more resource you attach to your business, the more you have to manage it.
Absolutely.
So our ability to manage is getting very, very thin, because a lot of the things that we've discovered through our own skills, through what we know and how we've Paul and I dive very deeply. We're not managers that point fingers. We're actually on the ground in the thick of it. So we have to navigate that very carefully, because if we brought in another business that was doing that, then our other business that we've already worked so hard on is going to struggle, and it already is. We're already seeing the roller coaster on the different sides of the business. So it works better to bring in expertise and click it. So we think that working on a plug and play basis is a much more efficient way of building the proposition. We're not greedy either. We're not all about having everything for ourselves. We're very communal in that way. Hence, that's why we got burnt so much with staff, because we just hire people. We keep them on. And training people in Thailand is really tough. I think it's also important to note that everyone who has a business of some sort, whether it's a payment gateway, whether it's actually just food and beverage operations, whether it's staffing, resourcing, all that stuff, they have their expertise in that field.
Yeah.
However, what they miss is how to bring that operationally and commercially into an actual real life situation environment. So as we say, we see a lot of people who capture data, but then they don't know how to actually commercialize that or monetize that in a way that makes sense. You have people who do production of an event, but they don't then know, wow, I'm doing this production event, I'm bringing 40,000 people in, I'm just working on ticket sales.
Yeah.
Whereas there's so much more there. So our job is to actually understand each of the businesses, but not to the level of technical expertise, but understand enough to guide them to say, here's what we need and here's how to plug it in. And then we sit on top and make it commercially viable for everyone.
Definitely. I still feel like this the software proposition that you guys have, it's intriguing because if you're saying that there's a gap in the market where that no one's working on, uh, this can be something pretty big if you guys were to work on this, or if I guess at this point you guys are at that classic entrepreneur stage where you kind of have to take a step back from being the CEOs and let others perhaps run an entire division without you. That is of course a big change in an entrepreneur's journey. And is that where you guys stand at this point?
Very much.
It's also not only a change, it's a change that I would welcome. The challenge is getting people who have the same headspace that we do.
Yeah,
Paul and I are very
absolutely.
unusual people. I mean, we play the infinite game because, I don't know, instinctively, intuitively, we see gaps, we see connections, and other people look at it and go, what? They don't see. And so to get people to even understand is tough. And then of course people come with their own objectives and their own
Of course.
agenda, and it doesn't always align. So finding people who are aligned is also difficult. So that's why we think if we can find a business, we already have actually, we're already collaborating with some providers who have their own business, who saw us in action and said, oh, we get the gap, we get what you guys do,
Yeah.
and we want to be part of that. So we're actually starting to collaborate with two parties who we're building those blocks. And I think that's for us, it's more efficient to do it that way.
Yeah.
Everybody wins, and we end up being friends and family almost in that way.
That's wonderful. If you guys are already working on that, I think that could be probably the next big thing in this space for you guys as well. Okay, so taking a step back to the technicalities of doing everything that you're doing. Now you've had the experiences of first running a tobacco company and then selling alcohol on retail online throughout COVID, and then you transition into excise and now into events. Uh, could you guide me a bit on the difficulty of doing this kind of business in Thailand as opposed to perhaps doing it in a different market like the Philippines or Vietnam?
Yeah. Well, Thailand's a double-edged sword
Hmm.
in that there are difficulties, but there are huge opportunities. So let's start with the opportunities. We always like to get into that. Thailand is an emerging market. It's an emerging consumer market. There are growing numbers of middle-class families that is happening in Thailand. And it only recently, just before COVID, Thailand was declared a developed country. So up
Hmm.
until that time, it was still developing. What that means is that there's a lot of money around, and there are people who have a lot of money. So there's opportunity for consumerism. That's the opportunity. The difficulty is, of course, as Paul's already mentioned, the big players that are very protective of this area because they want all the market.
Education.
Okay.
Sadly, what happens is the big players try and keep the consumer dumbed down because it's to their benefit,
Of
right?
course.
The more the consumer, and this is what's happened post-COVID, is the consumers, spent a lot of time at home, they didn't have anything to do. So what were they doing? They were researching, they were Googling that. So they've come out of COVID a lot smarter than what they did going
Yeah.
into COVID, right? Sadly, not everyone's made the changes that's needed considering what happened with the pandemic. However, what we find is that the educated consumer is increasing. And so players who do not want to change the way in which they do things will be left behind. And what we find, even though we're small, we're constantly looking at different things and researching and doing different things. Even to the point where we're currently creating a wine label for the biggest retail group in Thailand, right? Trying to educate their people internally because they're still thinking the old way about no, consumers aren't thinking that way anymore. You need to start thinking this way. So that's the challenge that we face in terms of getting people educated to the point where they make the decision not just based off price, but based off quality standards, off what the brand has to offer, the authenticity, originality, all that element. And that's what the big players don't want to do because when you're number one, why would you change? And that's
That's
always
true.
been, look, I experienced that with two brands, Marlboro and Bacardi. Both of them, I was fighting to say, hey guys, we need to do something different here. But why? We're number one. And look at what happened. Bacardi was number one. It's now dropped, significantly. So there's an element of when you're a big player, you get complacent. And I think that dumbs the market down. So our role in terms of educating people is that step by step, we believe in the power of one. It's the next person, it's the next meeting, it's the next investor, it's the next sale that's going to that's going to take you places, and that's how we deal with our challenges.
Interesting. But how does that differ across different geographies? Because you're right, COVID has pretty much educated everyone around the world. But in terms of difficulty of doing business specifically in Thailand, uh, are there any specific cultural or legal nuances that exist in Thailand that do not exist anywhere else?
Yes, well, let's put it this way: alcohol sales. This is how ridiculous it gets. You can only buy alcohol from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and then from 5 p.m. to midnight, right?
Why that three
Whereas
hour
you,
gap?
well, because this is probably having known different parts of the world and Asia in particular, where it gets the challenges happen here is the regulatory bodies, the government bodies don't talk to each other. So the
Okay.
health ministry does not talk to the excise, does not then talk to the tourism. Give you a prime example, right? Is the excise department wanted to drop the taxes down to to help tourism grow, right? But then they don't talk to the Interior Ministry to go, well, we need to increase the hours of sales and get rid of this policy, right? And then the Health Ministry goes, no, we shouldn't reduce it down because it's going to make people drink more. So
Oh,
there's
okay.
no so that's the challenges that we face is because each entity and each body is very different the way they talk. You can go to the Philippines and you can produce alcohol quite easily. You can
Yeah.
go to Vietnam and you can produce your own brands and that quite easily. You come here, you can't. You have to deal with across like three different ministries and they don't talk to each other. So whilst you may be able to get approval from one ministry, you don't get it from the other ministry or the other ministry. So they're the challenges that Thailand specifically has. Again, because there's a monopoly and duopoly system that takes place here. And the big guys just want to get bigger, which, and that makes it a challenge for us, in particular. How we deal with that, we understand and we work closely with understanding the laws. We don't break the laws because look, let's face it, this is Thailand, right? A lot of companies will come in and go, well, just pay under the table, just do this. We have this rule. You do that once, you're going to be
Do it
stuck doing
forever.
that forever
Absolutely.
and,
Yeah.
and it's going to go up. So let's find and understand the legislation and then work out what we can do up to that legislation without crossing over it. And that's what a lot of companies do not do. They just come in and go, oh, this is Thailand, it's easy. Let's just take the easy way and fix it that way.
Makes sense. But would the challenges be higher if you were manufacturing yourself? Because as of right now, you're just licensing the brand, right? Not the manufacturing process.
So we manufactured just before COVID we made two products for King Power, the local the local travel retail duty free supplier here,
Hmm.
and we actually had to go to a manufacturer. So remember, Mary said before COVID we made a gin, a vodka, a rum, and a whiskey locally here. So
Okay.
we had to actually go to the factory, work with the factory to get that manufactured, and then we made a sparkling wine here as well. So we understand that process, and I've done consultancy for manufacturers here, so I understand what they need to do. Is it easier? It is easier if you have that, because in order to get that license, there's not many around. So if you've got that license, then you've pretty much got an advantage over everyone. The sad reality is they have the license, but then they don't understand how best to leverage it and utilize it. They just make stuff and they go competing against the big player, which then gets killed. Whereas what we do is go, don't go up against the big player. Let's produce for people who want to do niche brands, niche products,
Yeah.
export it overseas, and do that way. That you can do, but people don't see it that way.
Right. So again, that's very insightful of the industry, and I'm sure that not a lot of people really understand that going into this industry, that this is the way that you need to play it. But on that theme, here's where I always like to end these episodes. I would looking back at your journey together in this industry, in the tobacco industry, and especially running a business in Thailand, which is now to a stage where it's successful and you're expanding and doing well. Are there, if you were to summarize it into like three things that you wish you knew that came as a surprise or a shock? Because I know you mentioned that there have been bad points in the business as well. So what are like three things summarized that you wish you knew about this industry or this market before you started?
Would you like to take this?
Three things.
Just three?
Yeah.
That
For now.
I wish I knew. Good question. It's stumped me a bit in terms of the three things. Maybe you go first. What do you?
I mean, I think our biggest challenge is hiring staff. The way staff hire happens here is very different to the way we hired in Australia. So I wish I had the skill of hiring good staff. That would have helped us tremendously, because if you want to know where the leakage in our profitability has been, it's hiring staff.
So to that point, I would add, and yeah, that's right, that was a big challenge, because what we did was we went and got people who were experienced in the industry. So they were either experienced selling Marlboro, they were experienced selling, Johnny Walker, they were experienced selling Penfolds wines, etc. But you know what? It's very easy to sell those brands because those brands already sell themselves. What we found was, but they come at a big price tag. So what if we had known that, as opposed to going to Diageo or Bacardi's or Pernod Ricard's and getting some of their ex-employees, I would go to someone who has the right mindset, attitude of selling, but doesn't really know about brands. Because then you become hungry and you become passionate about selling the brands. That was one of our biggest challenges. We took people on who came from the industry, and it cost us dearly because they couldn't sell a brand that was unknown.
Yeah.
So that would be challenge number one. It's all related to staff and the selection of staff. Yeah. So if you're a new player coming in, don't think that you go with an industry player, because sometimes it doesn't always work. And let me just touch on to that point. Part of the reason Mary and I work so well together is Mary is a foodie. Mary loves her food, she loves her flavours. So I leave everything up to her because she doesn't come from the industry. Sometimes when you come from the industry, you're a bit blinkered in that this is how you have to do things. Whereas I say to Mary, I need a flavour that goes with gin, and she'll go off and come up with something which no one else would do. Prime example, we tested with Japanese. We did a wasabi sake. And the Japanese just went, "What? You're doing a wasabi sake?" And they loved it. So it's opening your mind to not just thinking that you have to have someone experienced in the industry to grow the business. You just have to have someone with the right attitude and hunger to go in the same mindset.
Yeah, I think the old adage, you can teach skills, but you can't teach attitude.
Absolutely.
So high better attitude, that's the thing. I think the second one is learn the difference between what's a distraction and what's an opportunity.
Yes.
Because Paul is very well known in the industry. Everybody knows he's got connection. They throw all sorts of things and we've gone, before we've sort of settled down into what we're doing, I think we've gone up many, many dead ends and wasted many, many anxious hours trying to make something work. So I wish I knew how to distinguish between an opportunity and a distraction.
And I think it's also, to that point, it's also the people that come around and surround you. They come around you because they expect and they want something. So it's being able to identify faster in terms of who is really here to help and to grow together, and who is here to just try and suck something from you and then just leave. Yep. That's been, as an entrepreneur, that's been the biggest challenge, as well. in terms of having people around who just go, oh, there's an opportunity here, but the opportunity is not for our business, the opportunity is for their business. And we had a business partner, actually, we had a few business partners who were with us all that time, and all they were doing was feeding their business, their side of business.
Oh. So I guess both those things have to do with working with people in Thailand, which can be a challenge if you're not smart about it, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
and especially if you're foreign, because even though we're Thais by national, we were raised in Australia. We have a mindset of a foreigner, and they see that as opportunity. We didn't.
Yeah.
We were the opportunity.
This is a theme that I've also found in these podcasts is that when I ask guests what some challenges were, they often point to working with the locals, which can be, of course, a challenge. But then when I ask them what's the best part of working in these markets, they also say working with the locals.
Working with the locals. That's right.
So it's, again, as you said, a double-edged sword. At the same time, you have a great time working with these people in Southeast Asia because they're welcoming, they're accommodating, but at the same time, you have a subset of that makes things difficult as well.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. Yeah. And it's the resilience and it's the learning that keeps us going, because a lot of people were just going, we're out of here because these people are too risky. Yeah. But we see that as a skill too. We've learned how to discern between the two. And so now we're okay. But it was pretty painful at the time.
It's finding grit and resilience. They're the key words that you really. I mean, grit is very different. You really have to be able to just push through. I mean, when we look at it, we should have been gone a long time ago.
Well, I guess that's a great place to end this with the thought of resilience that builds businesses in the long term. Paul and Mary, thank you so much for being on the Emerge podcast. I usually take the last couple of minutes for you to plug your business and tell the audiences, if someone wants to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
Sure. Look, I mean, plugging our business. Well, it's hard to really say what we do, but we've gone from the strategic side of brand building, brand development. I do a lot of brand advisory consultancy, to importation, to brand activations on the ground, and then to event management. But as we also do, we look at systems and that are in place. I'm an advisor for the Australian Chamber of Commerce, the New Zealand Chamber of Commerce, and New Zealand Trade and Enterprise. So I get a lot of people wanting to come here and get advice. My advice is know your business and know what is the non-negotiables when you come into marketplace. If you want to contact us, it's pretty easy. My email is paul@s69.asia and mary@s69.asia. So that's the easiest way to we can send it to you and you can share it. But we're very open to everything, and that's the whole thing is we help people make assessments, and sometimes the businesses don't we actually don't do business together, but we become friends together, and we just go drinking and partying with them. That's how we roll.
Perfect. And that, I believe, is the theme of doing business in Southeast Asia as well. That is just easier to, work with people. And I feel like you guys are an embodiment of that sentiment as well. So that's perfect. Well, thank you so much, Paul and Mary. It was a pleasure having you on the podcast. And I'm sure that the things that we've spoken about are going to be very helpful for our audiences who are either working in this space or looking to work in this space in Thailand. So thank you so much for that. And I hope that the next time I'm in Thailand, I'm able to attend one of your events.
Please do. Even if you just want to come for a drink.
I'll keep an eye out on your upcoming events. Thank you so much, guys.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Take care.
While the world's still asleep, we're already grinding. Walking foreign streets, big city lights so blinding. Learning and hustling in this relentless game. The Emerge Pods next up, we're breaking the frame. While the world's still asleep, we're breaking the frame.